to Maldev's 50th Anniversary San Antonio Awards Gala. Tonight is brought to you by the generous support of our chair, Coca-Cola, Open Happiness. Maldev is grateful for the support of our co-chairs, Toyota, Vayamos Juntos, and Walmart. Save money, live better. Maldev is grateful for the support of our national airline sponsor, Southwest Airlines, and our national law firm partner, the Sidley Austin Foundation. Maldev is proud to honor the Honorable Henry Cisneros, founder and chairman of CityView and chairman of the executive committee and principal at Siebert Cisneros Shank & Company. Frank Herrera Jr., founder of the Herrera Law Firm. Regina Montoya, former Maldev board chair, attorney and civic leader. Honorable Diego Bernal, Texas State Representative of District 123. Please welcome your Master of Ceremonies for this evening, co-host and principal correspondent of Noticias Univision, Maria Antonieta Collins.
¿Qué tal? Muy buenas noches, ladies and gentlemen. Have a good night. ¿Cómo andan todos? Bueno, pues les pedimos que se nos sienten. No podemos empezar si no están en sus lugares. Les damos la bienvenida to Maldev's 2018 San Antonio Awards Gala. We have a great program with amazing honorees. This year is particularly special. We are honored that each and every one of you are here to help Maldev celebrate its 50th anniversary. And there is no better place to mark this historic occasion than right here in Maldev's original home. ¿Cuál otro? San Antonio, Texas. Eso, Maldev y San Antonio están unidos. Before we begin tonight's festivities, let me tell you a little about Maldev's remarkable history. For 50 years, Maldev litigation and advocacy have led the new laws and policies with wide-ranging impact for the Latino community and for the nation as a whole. Whether on the streets or in the schools, in boardrooms or living rooms, in legislative chambers or courtrooms, right up to the U.S. Supreme Court, Maldev has earned its reputation as the Latino legal voice for civil rights in America. ¿Sí o no? Just look at what Maldev has done in Texas alone over the last half century. 50 años de trabajo. In 1968, only a few months after opening its doors, Maldev secured the free speech rights of student protesters who were expelled from a high school in the Rio Grande Valley. Just 5 years later, Maldev struck back against the Texas legislature for carving up voting districts to keep Latinos out of power. It was the first victory at the U.S. Supreme Court, but not our last. One of the crowning achievements in our history started 41 years ago, this month, in September 1977, when Maldev went to court to stop the school district in Tyler, Texas, from charging tuition to the children of undocumented immigrants. The case was called Plyer versus Doe, and it led to the landmark 1982 U.S. Supreme Court ruling that said every child in America has a constitutional right to free public school education regardless of their immigration status. Have you listened to that? That is thanks to Maldev. The lives of millions of children were forever changed. In several cases, Maldev won important cases that ensure equitable funding in public schools in Texas and took up similar challenges in other states. And Maldev won another major Supreme Court victory when it fought back against a Texas redistricting plan that violated the Voting Rights Act. As we look back tonight on Maldev primeros 50 años, we are mindful that we still have a long road ahead. Throughout this evening, you'll hear more about what Maldev has done and continues to do to secure a better quality of life for Latinos here in Texas and throughout our great nation. We are grateful to have your support of this very important work. Tonight, we celebrate the careers and accomplishment of several amazing personas who have dedicated themselves to safeguarding and expanding the civil rights of the Latino community. And by celebrate, I mean after the gala, we are inviting you, all of you, to the after party right down the hall, dancing, a photo booth, and drinks. We're going to begin our very special program with a few remarks from leaders who have long supported Maldev mission and goals. We start with the mayor of San Antonio, Ron Nierenberg, which, please welcome him to the podium.
Bienvenidos, good evening. Maldev, I think you're going to need a bigger room. It's an honor to be here tonight to celebrate 5 decades of Maldev's work and advocacy in our city, in our state, in our country to protect the rights of Latinos. When many think of Latino civil rights movement, they think of people often who lived in events that unfolded in other parts of the country. They think of Cesar Chavez, Dolores Huerta, the National Farm Workers Association, grape strikes and mass marches and protests in California. Indeed, over 50 years ago last month, Cesar Chavez joined thousands of striking farm workers in Austin to demand fair wages and humane working conditions. But we here in San Antonio, in this room, know that the movement was actually homegrown here in Texas and in our city. Many Latino icons and organizations whose work inspired generations and catalyzed a meaningful change for millions were conceived, founded, and incubated right here in San Antonio, and sometimes marked by incremental change. And so I'd like to take a brief point of personal privilege and recognize a man who's not here tonight, the president and CEO of the University Health System, George Hernandez. George won't be recognized for the great work that some leaders in this room did this year to create the first ever compassionate and comprehensive housing strategy for the city of San Antonio. But George allowed me to take one of his executives, Lourdes Castro Ramirez, to work almost full-time on that plan, and she's here tonight, and I'd like to recognize Lourdes for chairing that effort. That plan, which is a movement to build equity in our community, started with a clarion call 30 years ago from another man who was in this room, our former mayor, Henry Cisneros, that was carried and made possible by the people that Maria Berrizaval assembled, that Noah Garcia assembled, that Lourdes chaired. And that incremental change to build equity in our city will be recognized the country over has started in San Antonio, a movement to make sure that it doesn't matter where you're from or where you live, you deserve fair, quality, safe, affordable housing. I'd also like to thank George for lending us another executive, not us, but our community, to fill a void left by Ramiro Cavazos as he goes up to the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for your leadership, Ramiro. And I'd like to also thank Rebecca Cedillo for becoming the interim CEO of the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Also, a notable university health system executive made possible again by George Hernandez. And I should say that I'm also happy that I'm joined tonight by my wife, Erica Prosper, who is the chair of the Hispanic Chamber. She's kind of amazing. But it happens here, incremental change and full-scale change. In fact, 30 years before the Delano grape strike, a 17-year-old Brackenridge High School senior named Emma Teniuca was organizing citywide protests at a time when Latinos were expected to be seen but not heard. She led a strike of 21,000 Pecan shell workers seeking fair wages and fair treatment, using nonviolent methods later emulated by Cesar Chavez and Martin Luther King Jr. When the Latino vote was suppressed and diluted, it was Willie Velazquez who founded the Southwest Voter Registration Project in 1974 here in San Antonio, Texas. The project has since become the largest and oldest nonpartisan Latino voter participation organization in these United States. When Spanish-speaking populations were ignored and dismissed nationally, it was KCOR radio station and television, the first Spanish-language stations in the United States, and the seeds of what would later become Univision, one of the largest media companies in the world that finally gave Latinos a voice. When Latino children faced institutional barriers to educational opportunity, it was Dr. Jose Cardenas, a former superintendent of the Edgewood School District, who began IDRA in 1973 to study those barriers. IDRA is now the leading national organization focusing on the education of Latino children. And I want to give a special shout out to Kuka, who is here. She had a fantastic internship in 2001 that helped give me a job, so thank you, Kuka. And finally, when Latinos were faced with discrimination in critical areas of civil life like voting and education, Pete Tiarina, Greg Luna, and others founded MALDEF. Today, the most respected law firm for Latinos in the United States. MALDEF's tireless legacy began with one San Antonio family, the Rodriguez family in Edgewood ISD, who dared to take the state of Texas to court in the now infamous Rodriguez v. SAISD case to demand equal educational opportunities for their students. It was San Antonio students, with the help of San Antonio lawyers, who inspired other families to do the same across this state and the country for decades, and that fight still continues. I am proud, and I know you are as well, that San Antonio is the birthplace and cradle of this MALDEF and of all other civil rights organizations that dared to disrupt invidious social norms and hierarchies and change our way of life for the better. So I hope we can celebrate and raise a glass tonight. In many ways, MALDEF was not only founded here in San Antonio, but it represents the best of who we are as a city. When our community is threatened, we hear the call. When we offer our time, our talent, and our heart, we stand together and we never, ever back down. Let me say that again. We stand together and we never, ever back down. And I also have to give a special shout out to MALDEF for inspiring some of the leaders who push us forward in civic leadership today. You'll be hearing from Representative Diego Bernal, my former colleague, as well as my current colleague and my Chief Policy Advisor, Chief Policy Director, Marisa Bono. So, in closing, thank you, MALDEF, for continuing to fight for the best of who we are as a community, and to all of the current and former MALDEF lawyers, advocates, and allies who have traveled to be here tonight to celebrate this historic anniversary, I say to you, welcome home.
Un aplauso grande para el alcalde, que sin lugar a dudas, la primera dama, doña Erika Prosper, tiene mucho que ver en ese amor a los latinos también. Yes. Well, thank you for everything you've done for the Latino community in this place. San Antonio, la casa de MALDEF. Y seguimos con el programa. Now, please join me in welcome to the stage MALDEF's Interim Southwest Regional Council, Celina Moreno. Celina, por favor.
Thank you, Maria. And thank you, everyone, so much for joining us here tonight. I stand representing 5 of MALDEF's 50 years, and it has been my privilege to lead our Southwest Regional team during this critical year of our nation's history. It's been a tough year, huh? But I'm really honored to report a number of important victories. First, MALDEF continues its long history of ensuring equal educational opportunities for all students. In July, MALDEF secured a monumental victory on behalf of New Mexico's school children. The court declared, for the first time in the history of the state, that education is a fundamental right. And in the Texas redistricting case, we won a ruling from the U.S. Supreme Court affirming our victory against the racial gerrymandering of Latinos in Fort Worth, Texas. The Supreme Court also ruled in our favor and upheld the new Latino majority congressional district spanning San Antonio and Austin. And after 7 long years, the Texas redistricting case is finally winding down. And we can proudly say that through MALDEF's litigation, we increased Latino opportunity to elect in Congress and the Texas State House. In the area of immigration, this year, when Texas sued the federal government to end DACA, MALDEF intervened on behalf of 22 Dreamers. Because we knew that the Trump administration could not be trusted to defend DACA. And I want to recognize one of our DACA recipients here tonight, Maria Rocha. She is a first grade teacher right here in San Antonio, and she is one of our many brave DACA clients. And in August, the court rejected Texas's request to block DACA, and DACA lives. Now, many doubted that in the same court that blocked DAPA, that we could not prevail, but we proved them wrong, and MALDEF will continue for the next 50 years taking on those tough cases. MALDEF is also taking the fight to the disastrous Trump administration by challenging the addition of a citizenship question to the 2020 census. And we represent a diverse coalition of organizations across the country, including several in our Southwest region, and I want to recognize some of them who are here today. The Texas House Mexican American Legislative Caucus, the Senate Hispanic Caucus, and the Southwest Voter Registration and Education Project. And in this challenging work, we draw strength from the bold leadership of our President, Thomas Saenz, and our brilliant Vice President of Litigation, Nina Perales. And especially from our staff that spends every day in the trenches. I want y'all to stand, and I want y'all to stay standing, because our work would not be possible without the tireless advocacy from our Southwest Regional Office staff. So please stand. Isabel Pina. Where are y'all? Carmen Leja. Ernest Herrera. Jack Salmon. Fatima Menendez. And Alejandra Avila. And although not all of them are here today, I want y'all to stand too, because God bless our interns. Woo! They could take their talent literally anywhere, and they choose to spend it at MALDEF and serving our community. And maybe stopping once in a while for a mandatory Rihanna or Daddy Yankee break to dance, and you'll see about that later after the dance. I want to see everybody on the dance floor. But I also want to thank, and I would like y'all to stand as well. There are so many former Maldefians here. And we have a saying, once a Maldefian, always a Maldefian. They are our extended team MALDEF, and so are you. And I want to thank all of our awardees here tonight and thank all of you for joining us to celebrate, because we would not be here without you. So feliz cumpleaños MALDEF. Muchos más. Muchas gracias.
Eso, Celina, le gritan por ahí. Thank you, Celina. Thanks, everyone at MALDEF for their tireless work. We are grateful for your hard work and dedication. And now vamos a seguir con el programa porque tenemos distinguidísima gente que ha apoyado tanto a MALDEF. Please welcome to the stage longtime MALDEF board member, vice president, and head of Latin Affairs for the Coca-Cola Company and our official 50th anniversary San Antonio GALA chair, Peter Villegas.
Good evening, San Antonio. On behalf of the Coca-Cola Company, I'm excited to be with all of you this evening, especially in this beautiful city, as we celebrate 50 years of incredible leadership of MALDEF. This is also a special evening for me personally, because I've been a Maldefian for over 20 years, serving on the board of directors under both the leadership of Antonia Hernandez and Tom Saenz. Thank you both for all that you have done over the years. Now, for those of you who know me, I'm from LA, Los Angeles, where MALDEF is headquartered. And I'm a huge sports fan, so let me just get this out of the way. I have good news and bad news for San Antonio. You know the bad news. LeBron James is coming to the LA Lakers. Now, I don't say that as a Laker fan. Yeah, they come to LA. I'm gonna call LeBron. Now, I don't say that as a sports fan. LeBron James is also our spokesperson for Sprite, so he's a Coca-Cola partner. So be easy. When I'm sponsoring MALDEF, LeBron James is sponsoring MALDEF. Let's get that straight. Now let me give you the good news, and I know it's kind of tough news for San Antonio, but I say this with great pride. I'm currently the chairman of the United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and I'm very excited that as the Lakers, we need to go out and get the best to lead this organization to a new area. And we look to find somebody who was talented, skilled, and had the ability to take this national Latino business organization to the new level. And as all of you know, we're very happy that we chose your friend, our friend, Ramiro Cavazos, to lead this organization. So don't look at it as San Antonio losing a pillar in your community. Look at it as San Antonio giving for the betterment of the rest of this country. Thank you very much, San Antonio. And I mentioned the USHCC, and I would like to also add the Alphas and the Haceras and the CHCIs and the Chilis and all of the numerous national Latino organizations, because in my opinion, they would not be in their area of influence if it were not for the efforts of MALDEF laying the groundwork across this country for the last 50 years. If there's no MALDEF, there's no other organizations representing different areas of our community. Thank you, MALDEF, for being a leader for our community on so many fronts. And this is one of the many reasons why Coca-Cola and MALDEF has enjoyed an important partnership over the last 2 decades. I hope you're enjoying the bottles. Don't drink them. I know San Antonio likes to drink. Just put them on your desk, go in your office. Let me also acknowledge a very dear colleague and a good friend, Leroy Cavazos, from our local bottler. Leroy, stand up, represent. Now, I have the honor of leading the Office of Latin Affairs for the Coca-Cola Company, and my role is, it provides me a seat at the Coca-Cola Executive Leadership Team, which provides our company's strategy for North America. Being the only Latino on our Executive Leadership Team provides me with great responsibility to protect and promote Hispanics in corporate America. Now, I was very proud when Coca-Cola took a position to support the Dreamers, when we were very vocal to address DACA, and when Coca-Cola challenged Washington, D.C. to address a very important American issue. But I want all of you to know that it was not Peter Villegas at the table. It was the ghosts of MALDEF on my shoulder in our boardroom, conveying, advocating for our community. It was everyone in this room, everything that MALDEF has done, and everything that I've learned over 20 years that allowed me to advocate on why Coca-Cola needs to support our community. And I was so proud when my colleagues embraced it, supported it, but it was only because of MALDEF and everything that you do. Thank you, MALDEF, for that. Let me close by acknowledging our awardees. Diego Bernal, I have not had the opportunity to meet you, but if you're a friend of MALDEF, you're a friend of mine. I look forward to more tremendous accomplishments from you. My friend Frank Herrera, who has been a consistent. When I met Frank, I had some hair, no mas. But when Frank and I watched you as a young fellow board member, your consistency of courage and strength was something that I admired. Thank you for all that you have done over the years. My dear friend Regina Montoya, Exhibit A of female empowerment, someone who has just been driven and advocated with strength and ability on what a female can do when she gets an opportunity. She has just been tremendous, and thank you so much, Regina, for everything that you've done. And then, of course, Henry Cisneros, Spurs fan. I've had to deal with it. I've dealt with it. I'm okay with it. But I do remember when Henry became head of Univision. I was a young man. I was 20. And I said, Henry, can I come spend some time with you. I'd like to talk to you. I knew he was busy. I went to his office. He was busy. But he took the time to sit down and just have a chat with me, which really helped me launch my 20-plus year career. And I want to thank him for that. Because now when I get a call from a 20-year-old who wants to ask questions, how do I navigate my career? I say yes. I say yes because I remember what Henry did for me on that very busy day. And I hope that I've touched as many lives as Henry has touched in his career. Thank you, Henry, for what you have done. And congratulations to MALDEF. Enjoy the evening.
Palabras del corazón. Otro aplauso, pero que se oiga bien, hombre. MALDEF le da las gracias por the kind words y for your support. And now, let's view a video from this year's co-chair, Toyota. Vamos a ver.
Today is the day to take a step, take a stand, take that giant leap. There's something impossible out there waiting for you. So, we have a vision to make movement better for everyone. To give everyone the same chance and the same hope to be their very best. Because when we're free to move, anything is possible.
Please join me now in welcoming our GALA co-chair, Sebastián Ontiveros, National Director of Multicultural Business Alliance and Strategic Group, and Senior Manager of Consumer Engagement for Toyota Motor North America. Sebastián Ontiveros.
Good evening, everyone. Try one more time. Good evening, everyone. Buenas noches. Just real quick, a point of personal privilege. I know he's not getting an award tonight, and he just spoke. And he's a man that needs no introduction or further recognition. But I'm living proof, actually, of Peter Villegas and kind of that paying it forward. So I want to really quick say thank you, Peter. And, you know, I've been that call to you. And so I appreciate all of your leadership and mentorship. So. I am also from LA, so I'm gonna kind of avoid, I'm gonna avoid the Go Spurs Go chants, and I'm gonna stay on script. So here it goes. On behalf of Toyota, I'd like to congratulate Thomas Saenz, staff, and MALDEF on 50 years as the law firm of the Latino community. We at Toyota are proud to be committed, longtime partners with this organization, which has a strong track record of tireless advocacy and demand for equity on behalf of our shared communities. Behind our commitment is a simple fact. When the Latino community prospers, so does America. The two are inextricably bound. Forming partnerships like ones with MALDEF is an important part of that strategy to ensure continued growth and progress for all in our society. Toyota's theme this year, as you just saw, in conjunction with the Olympics, is Start Your Impossible, which is all about encouraging people to challenge themselves and the status quo to reach their dreams. The meaning behind this campaign is exactly what tonight's honorees and MALDEF represent. It is only because they challenged and began their impossible that our community has been able to thrive and continue to challenge what is possible. On behalf of Toyota, I'd like to congratulate tonight's honorees for their dedication and shared vision for our country. Former San Antonio Mayor Henry Cisneros, Texas Representative Diego Bernal, I know you're right here, former Board Chair Regina Montoya, and our very own compadre Frank Herrera, who helps build, yep, that's right, who helps build our beautiful and award-winning tundras and Tacomas right here in San Antonio. So, felicidades a todos y vayamos juntos. Thank you very much.
No, pues es una noche entre Los Ángeles y San Antonio Spurs. Por favor. Gracias a Sebastián. Y ahora sí, un aplauso para todos ellos que han estado hablando muy bien. Son como compadres esta noche de Maldev. Y vamos a continuar con el programa. Known for his commitment to bringing justice to the underdog, Frank Herrera está aquí con nosotros y viene a presentarnos algo más. Viene con dos grandes, no, yo creo que ya nos estamos poniendo mal, oigan. Yo que hablo poco inglés y el prompter que se está yendo para otro lado. Sí, por favor, por ahí vigílenme bien lo que va. Y tenemos que, y en verdad que se los estoy pidiendo porque creo que vienen Antonio Hernández, el señor Sáez y quién más. Tenemos aquí un buen momento. Pedimos que vengan los próximos invitados a hablar aquí, por favor. Thank you very much. Oiga, esto es como la fiesta de los compadres, por favor, se lo pedimos y discúlpenme, pero así pasa, es en vivo todo, ¿no?
So, I have my two predecessors coming up here to join me, and I first have to say that I have often felt during my career metaphorically squeezed between these two women. But it's a great pleasure today to be up on stage between them. In this particular week, I think it is important to note, particularly after the deplorable showing yesterday in Washington, D.C., that in our 50-year history, Maldiv has been led for 29 of those years by women. And these two extraordinary leaders standing next to me have led this organization for a collective 27 years. They need no introduction, but of course, to my right is our third leader, second president and general counsel, who led Maldiv for 9 of its early years, establishing the organization as the preeminent legal representative of the Latino community, Vilma Martinez. And to my left, a woman who needs no introduction. I should say that Vilma is a San Antonio native. To my left is a Los Angeles native. A tremendous leader who was at the helm of Maldiv for a record-breaking 18 years. And I'm sure given that tenure, she must have spent at least 5 years total in San Antonio, Texas.
It's true.
Antonio Hernandez. Now, I have had the great honor of leading Maldiv for 9 years, but all I can say in the shadow of these two tremendous leaders in comparison, that with respect to my tenure, I'm a little taller than them. So You got to grasp what you can. But we're here together to present a very special recognition that we have called the President and General Counsel Award to an individual who has, as a volunteer board member over decades, contributed to MALDEF's greater success. We have a number of extraordinary board members over the years. Indeed, a little later this evening, we'll recognize another one. But there are some board members who, over decades, step forward not only as board members, but as advisors, as consultants, to meet not just with MALDEF staff, not just with potential funders, but sometimes with city planners, sometimes with elected officials, sometimes with foundation leaders who need to be brought to their senses. And certainly our honoree tonight is one of those people. Let's watch a video tribute to our own Frank Herrera.
You know, Frank was raised in a little town, Edna, near the coast, the Gulf Coast of Texas, and I don't know, you know, as a young Mexican American, he didn't have a lot of opportunities, but I think Frank was determined, and his family background strengthened him, and he was determined that he was going to make something out of his life.
No doubt, what's driven Dad throughout his entire life has been his parents. And what he experienced growing up as a child in Edna, Texas. His parents taught him that inequality is unacceptable, period. Which I think is why he's become so involved in MALDEF. Growing up, he saw a lot of the abuses that went on with the Hispanic community and African American community. And he not only saw it, but he lived it. He attended a segregated school. He attended school without shoes, and that's what he grew up with. And he, and along with his parents, who taught him about the social inequalities and taught him the power of education, drove him to go to school.
Frank came into the practice of law when Mexican Americans were not treated fairly. He championed our rights. He championed our opportunity to be among that we the people, that we are part of that promise. And his goals have always been to champion the rights of not just the Latino community, but anyone that was treated less than, that was not viewed as part of that we. And so his promise to his children and to those who will come after is that we are all equal under the law.
Frank has never forgotten where he came from. He's never forgotten the obligation that he has to support his community and to present the best of what the Mexican American Latino community has to offer. He's extraordinarily generous, and he's driven by making life better for the underrepresented and the poor.
I am most proud of Frank because he actually lives his dream. And his dream has always been to empower Hispanics everywhere, but especially in South Texas. I am most proud of him for the effort that he has made, the years of work he's put in that, and the success that he has achieved.
The lesson I've learned most often, or hear the most, is failure is not an option. No matter what it takes, no matter how far you have to go, you cannot fail. To go along with that, it's actually our firm slogan, which is winning isn't luck, it's not a kind of fight.
His legacy is a question that I think now we're thinking about more and more every day. And I think Dad is thinking more and more about what is his legacy. And if you walk to our office, and take a tour, you quickly see where he's come from, where he's been, and where he really wants to go and where he wants the family to go.
As you may have heard, this is our 50th anniversary. And I want to explain Frank's, after decades of board service, his latest contribution to us is that Frank is one of our 3 50th anniversary co-chairs. The other 2 are the women leaders of MALDEF standing next to me, Vilma Martinez and Antonia Hernandez. But we have named this award the President and General Counsel Award, not just because we were so fortunate to have Antonia and Vilma here, not just because of their partnership with Frank on the 50th anniversary, but because we recognize our history of great presidents and general counsel, present company accepted. Which is to say, they're not here with us, but we believe that our predecessors, the first president of MALDEF, the late Pete Tijerina, the first president and general counsel of MALDEF, the late Mario Obledo, and someone whom we lost earlier this year, our late president and general counsel who spent much time in San Antonio, Joaquin G. Avila. Recognizing their contributions and those of Antonia and Vilma, we are very, very proud to present this first ever MALDEF President and General Counsel's Award to Frank Herrera.
Cecilia.
After that introduction as a lawyer, can you believe that I'm speechless? As I'm standing here before you today, I am truly humbled and honored to receive this prestigious award. But this honor, however, must be shared with the true fighters outside in the courtrooms. And that is the lawyers, paraprofessionals, the secretaries of MALDEF. Having had the privilege of having served as chair on behalf of MALDEF on 3 different occasions, I can attest to you the countless hours that these people serve. I know that Antonia would call me periodically, and she's the only one that can affectionately call me Frankie. She would call me and says, Frankie, I need some help in Los Angeles. And obviously, that was a command. And I would drop whatever I was doing and catch my airplane to Los Angeles. Actually, in those days, it was San Francisco. Later on, it became Los Angeles. And so, really, the development of my professional life, I owe it to MALDEF. Because they gave me the opportunity to serve our people. They are the people's, Latino people, law firm. And we have the most dedicated, the most brilliant lawyers of any law firm. And so, while the honor is being given to me today, truly I want to share this honor with all of the MALDEF lawyers, all of the MALDEF paralegals, and all of the MALDEF staff, because they are the ones that hold the beacon, and they're the ones that make it possible for the chairman of the board to shine. So I thank you for all of that help. On a personal level, I want to thank my family. Most of you, when I was a young lawyer on MALDEF, most of you got to meet Alia. As you know, passed away at a very young age. But it was through her encouragement, even during her illness, to continue serving MALDEF. And when Antonia would call me and she was ill, she said, "Go on, I can take care of it." And so I owe a dear debt of gratitude to her. But as the saying goes, cuando Dios quita, Él reemplaza. And so he replaced, no, not really replaced, he brought me another partner, Cecilia, who is, as you know, she dedicated her professional life as a Foreign Service officer and traveled throughout the world. In fact, I got to meet her in Mexico during her tour there. And she tells a story that I was there as a lawyer, and I asked to see, went to the American Embassy, and she tells a story that I said, I need somebody to notarize my settlement that I had here in with Mexican widows of husband had been killed here in the United States. And so I had to get the settlement papers notarized. And she said that there was somebody told her, hey, there's a lawyer there from San Antonio that he wants to see you. Anyway, the rest is history, the saying goes. But I also want to acknowledge, she has been truly a second partner in my second phase of my life. And I owe her a big debt of gratitude as well. Having said that, I have two great sons, Jorge, as you saw in the video, and his wife Victoria here. And also, I've been blessed with two great grandkids, the three of them. Ilan, Alejandra, and Carolina, I think they're here. And then Katie and Javier Herrera, my second family. And their children are too small. Tomas, who I think is a year and 3 months, and Ali, I think, is 3 years. They would have been here tonight, but for their age. And then I want to acknowledge my other family, my family that I grew up with in Edna. My sisters, my two sisters, and my brother Robert, and Lilia and Gloria. And Gloria's not here today, and my sisters-in-laws, who came in from Houston. Now let me pause a second and share with you a few thoughts on MALDEF's work. All of the demographers tell us that we are the fastest growing minority community in the United States. Notwithstanding, however, we face many, many challenges. We're attacked on the national level. Now, you know what I'm talking about. But notwithstanding those challenges, in fact, that simply emboldened us to move forward. And so it is, MALDEF's work is far more critical under today than ever before. Our community is being challenged more so than ever before, even I think more viciously than in the 40s and 50s and 60s. In short, we need MALDEF more so ever today. But it can only continue with people such as yourselves blessing us with your attendance here at these functions and events, because obviously we need the revenues to continue this battle. And so while I am in my autumn years of my life, the work of MALDEF can only continue with the support of people such as yourself. Relating to the Latino community, I reminded of the words of Robert Frost in his poem, Stopping by the Woods on a Snowy Evening. The woods are lonely, dark, and deep. but I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep. And miles to go before I sleep. Thank you so much for this honor.
Gracias a Frank y gracias a Tom, a Antonia, a Vilma por este momento que fue una inspiración, Tom, cuando recuerda que los pilares de MALDEF son mujeres y Vilma y Antonia son leyenda en estos 50 años. Creo que están muy interesados, pero tenemos que seguir. Por favor, as long as we are extending thanks to board member, this is the perfect time to recognize our next award recipient. It's my pleasure to introduce the immediate past chair of MALDEF's Board of Directors. Todo el mundo la quiere y le aplaude. A Regina Montoya, recipient of the Valerie Cantor Award for Extraordinary Achievement. Actually, the phrase extraordinary achievement doesn't do justice to Regina's life and career. Regina is currently at work on a book about the importance of incorporating Latinos into the economic, political, and social fabric of America, and considering her own experiences, there can be no better expert. Regina was one of the first Latinas to both graduate from Harvard Law School and earn a partnership in a major corporate law firm. She served as an assistant to the president and director of the Office of Intergovernmental Affairs in the Clinton administration and was nominated to serve as U.S. representative to the 53rd session of the General Assembly of the United Nations. Today, Regina deftly manages many roles on the state and national levels. She is the chief strategist of the GMC Strategy Group, vice chair of the board of directors of the Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport, and chair of Dallas Mayor Mike Rawlings' Task Force on Poverty. Under her leadership, the task force identified key drivers of poverty in Dallas and presented several recommendations to reduce the pervasive social and economic impacts on poverty on Dallas residents. Regina is also highly active in the business and non-profit communities. She continues to serve on MALDEF's board, and she is a member of several other boards and has received numerous awards for her achievements, including the Lifetime Achievement Award from the Texas Minority Council Program of the State Bar of Texas, Latina Lawyer of the Year from the Hispanic National Bar Association, the Harvard Alumni Association Award, and the Dallas Minority Business Leaders Award from the Dallas Business Journal. Please turn your attention to the screens for a tribute to the work and life of our Regina Montoya.
Regina's an inspiration. She's an incredible person, and not only is she incredibly intelligent, but she's also continues to inspire other generations, from not just a young student like me, you know, with my friends who went to go knock on doors for her, but even young girls today. I think for us to be able to see that a woman in her position that has continued to work for our community tirelessly, regardless of what obstacles are put in front of her, is something that we'll be very grateful for many generations to come.
You know, she's a very poised person. She's a great mother. She's a great family individual. She's a person of grace. So she's accomplished a lot, but I think it's the individual Regina Montoya that I'm most proud of being her friend. She's a person that I, at any time, could put her in a difficult situation, and I think she would come out of it the other way, in a better way.
If you look at Regina Montoya's accomplishments, she has always been involved in the community. And when I say in the community, I say it in the private and the public sector. She has experience at every single level of government, federal, state, local government, non-profit. So I believe that Regina is building a legacy of helping people, of getting involved in the community with the intense desire of making it better. And that is something that is invaluable.
My first impression of Regina, and I think it's probably goes for most people, is she's such a delightful, engaging person, so friendly. What you quickly find out, though, with Regina is when you're in a business environment, and in our example as a board of director, she's really good at getting to the heart of an issue. What drives Regina, in my opinion, is her, number one, her personal integrity, and number two, she has a relentless focus on seeing things through to an end. She's really, really good at making sure that from a board perspective, no stones are left unturned, and she's very, very thorough.
Regina is a trailblazer, not just for women in Dallas, but women attorneys all across our country, where we continue to be amazed by her and inspired by her, and we know that she's going to continue to do amazing things right here in our great state.
I just think that Regina is a pleasant person, a person that will always take the issues on, but she'll do it in a way that brings people together. She doesn't try to poke people in the eye. And I think that's a real leadership skill to be able to do that. I'm proud to have her as a friend, and congratulations to her for this wonderful award.
Y ahora, señoras y señores, un gran aplauso, una gran bienvenida a quien recibe el Valerie Cantor Award for Extraordinary Achievement and Maldives Immediate Past Board Chair, Regina Montoya.
Thank you so much. Humbled, thankful, and unbelievably moved. These are the words that come to mind when I think of this extraordinary honor. I am deeply appreciative to everyone at MALDEF for this very special award. As I thought about this evening, I recalled a scene in the play All the Way, which chronicles Lyndon Baines Johnson's first year as president. The play begins with LBJ speaking to some aides and recounting his first career as a teacher in a small school in Cotulla, Texas. He described his first day of school. His students were young Latino children, many of them children of migrant workers. And even though they were very young, probably some of them were migrant workers as well. He knew they were leading very hard lives because they lived in extreme poverty. Their parents worked as hard as they could to provide for their families, but there just wasn't enough money. Even though they were living in abject poverty, these children on the first day of school were bright-eyed, they were happy, laughing, ready for a new adventure with this young teacher. From his telling, you knew LBJ loved being there. But then something happened to his students. They had to leave for the fields during the middle of the year, and the children trickled back to school and to his classroom after working in the fields as migrant workers, but something was very different. They came back, and that light in their eyes was gone. They were already worn out. The teachers didn't have much money, including President Johnson, but they would dig deep into their own pockets to provide food for the children, to buy them clothes and other necessities, balls and toys, and the first book they would ever own, just to make their lives a little bit better. When LBJ became president after that terrible day in Dallas, he remembered his experience in Cotulla that helped convince him that our country needed a war on poverty. He couldn't understand how the richest country in the world could have schools where children didn't have enough to eat. He wanted every child to be given a chance to excel, no matter whether they were rich or poor. President Johnson didn't stop with the war on poverty. He engineered the passage of the historic Civil Rights Act, which prohibited racial discrimination in employment and education, and he ended racial segregation in public places such as schools and buses. The Fair Housing Act of 1968 was passed. And he used his bully pulpit to proclaim that equality and justice would be the law of the land for all, no matter the color of their skin or the size of their pocketbook. That was 50 years ago, over 50 years ago. But President Johnson's dream of fairness and equality needed others to ensure that that dream would become a reality. And that is where MALDEF comes in. Today, we celebrate the 50th anniversary of MALDEF, an organization founded to ensure that Latinos would be part of the reality that LBJ so desperately wanted to see for all. MALDEF was born to ensure that the light in the eyes of those children were always bright and never extinguished. How fitting that we are here in San Antonio, the site of MALDEF's founding by a group of visionary leaders who risked much to ensure that the civil rights of Latinos would never be curtailed or diminished. And we are only 90 miles from that little school in Cotula. In these past 50 years, MALDEF has given voice to the voiceless. It has become the premier law firm of the Latino community. Thank you. Let us give MALDEF another round of applause. But as a young leader, as a young lawyer, I remember reading about the legendary work of the incredible lawyers at MALDEF. I looked up at them with awe and admiration for their groundbreaking work. From arguing cases in the Supreme Court, like Plyler v. Doe, to redistricting cases, voting rights cases, education cases, a list that is too long for me to read tonight, MALDEF was there. I've been inspired by the brilliance of the MALDEF attorneys, by their tenacity and their willingness to go anywhere in the U.S. to seek justice and fairness. Now you know why I'm so moved by this award. It comes from an organization that has impacted millions of Latinos and has changed the course of history. I cannot thank our incredible leader, Tom Science, enough for his vision. A brilliant, committed, and tenacious leader, he is the personification of what those visionaries wanted for MALDEF 50 years ago. Like Frank, I want to thank every attorney and every staff member of MALDEF. You are doing the work of angels, and your reward is knowing that you have made life better for millions. A special word of thanks to our special guests tonight, Vilma Martinez and Antonia Hernandez. Look at what both of you have wrought and what your leadership has given to our Latino community. Thank you. And I want to congratulate my fellow award winners, State Representative Diego Bernal, my fellow board member, Frank Herrera Jr., and the incomparable Henry Cisneros. How humbled I am to be in your presence, so thank you very much. I too want to take just a moment of special opportunity to thank some very special people in my life too. To my cousin Gloria Meraz, who is here, and her husband Joel Davidson, thank you for being here. I spent many summers with Gloria and her family in El Paso, and so many memories, and it's great to have my family members here with me, traveling from all over Texas to be here. To my wonderful friend, Raquel Favela, thank you for being here. Raquel brought her expertise on housing to Dallas and transformed how we approach housing for all. Mr. Mayor, Raquel did leave San Antonio for Dallas, and we already have our housing plan in place because of Raquel. So thank you, Raquel. Also, many thanks to my longtime friend, Pat Villarreal, who is here tonight. Pat is a native of San Antonio, and Paul and I met her in law school. We lured her from San Antonio, and now she lives in Dallas, where she ran one of the biggest law firms. But she wouldn't miss this glorious evening with many of her family members, and MALDEF thanks Pat for her very generous support of this evening. Thanks for always answering the call and for being such a dear friend. Thank you, Pat Villarreal. Thank you. And since we are talking about Dallas, and I keep hearing these things about the Spurs and the Lakers, go Dallas Mavs. Oh yeah, we might need a few more additions right now too, but anyway, well, another day. I want to thank my smart, beautiful daughter, Jessica Montoya Coggins. Thank you, Jessica. She has taken MALDEF to heart. She has been to MALDEF events in New York City, DC, LA, San Antonio, again, because this is so important for all of us. And then there is my incredible husband, Paul Coggins. When I was asked to serve as the chair of the MALDEF board, we talked about the commitment and the resources that we felt we would need to ensure the success of this incredible and amazing organization. Paul didn't hesitate in his encouragement. He said, MALDEF is one of the most important organizations in America, and where would our country be without it? Thank God for MALDEF. The work of MALDEF burns in our hearts, and I know it burns in your hearts as well. But I thank Paul for his commitment and support of this extraordinary organization. I send him my incredibly deep love. Thank you, Paul, for always being there also for me, but also for MALDEF and so many people that MALDEF has helped. There are not enough, thank you, Paul, thanks. There are not enough words to express how special tonight is. And I want to share with Raul the comments that he made a few moments ago. For all of you who have stood up and supported MALDEF, as the former board chair, I have stood on many stages with Tom Science and other cities across the country asking people for the support. And I can tell you right now, it is so incredibly important for all of us to stand there. As the mayor said, be there, stand there, and be there for MALDEF. Because if it wasn't MALDEF here, what would we be facing right now? Thank you to MALDEF. And to those leaders who started MALDEF 50 years ago, if any of you are here tonight, thank you. And if you are above us, looking down on this incredible gathering, muchísimas gracias. We owe you so much. Many thanks for this honor. I am really humbled. Thank you.
No hay premio sin trofeo.
Oh, gracias. Thank you. You're doing a great job. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Regina recuerda algo para todos los fundadores de MALDEF. Antonia, Vilma, Tom nos recuerdan que MALDEF es parte de la sangre de los latinos y dijo algo para reflexionar. ¿Qué sería de los latinos hoy en 2018 sin MALDEF? Sería otro mundo totalmente diferente. Y bueno, y continuamos ahora porque queremos recordarles que como nos dijeron al principio de esta noche, tenemos más para premiar, tenemos más personas para premiar y una vez se es once a Maldefian, always a Maldefian. And I'm so pleased to introduce you to another member of MALDEF's extended family, Representative Diego Bernal, recipient of the Matt Garcia Public Service Award. Diego is best known, sí, un aplauso. He is best known today for his work in the Texas legislature, and at MALDEF, we can proudly say that Diego, I knew you when. We knew Diego from when he was still in a law school at the University of Michigan. He worked at MALDEF while still a student, and after graduation, he returned to his native San Antonio and joined MALDEF as a staff member. As a staff attorney, always a passionate advocate for working people, children, and immigrant communities, Diego worked sin descanso for systemic changes to ensure equitable funding for Texas public schools and fought against discrimination in schools and the workplace. Before enrolling in law school, Diego earned his undergraduate degree and master's degree in social work at the University of Michigan. As a social worker, he helped young people in Detroit transition out of gangs and into school or the workforce. Diego was elected to the San Antonio City Council representing District 1 in June 2011 and moved on to the Texas House of Representatives on his election in February 2015. He represents District 123, home to downtown and north central San Antonio, parts of the city's west side, along with the city of Castle Hills. Diego currently serves as the vice chairman of the House Committee on Public Education, and it's also a member of the House Committee on Urban Affairs and the House Committee of House Administration. And somehow, in his spare time, and it's hard to imagine Diego having any spare time, he has cut 4 successful albums that are a vibrant blend of hip-hop and Latin soul. Let's take a look at the inspiring life of Representative Diego Bernal.
I first met Diego in middle school. He was 1 or 2 years behind my brother and I, and we met him at the Hoya Middle School out in the playground, and Diego used to always wear this Batman pin, so we'd always make fun of him for wearing the Batman pin. Diego is like very studious, but also a little bit of a nerd, and but always friendly to everybody, always easy to talk to, and just a great guy to be around. Diego has been a champion and a fighter for education in Texas and the idea that everybody deserves a good education. And I was struck a few years ago when he visited all of the schools in his district and then put together what I thought was an amazing report about his experience and how our public schools need to improve and the ways that they're in some ways failing our students.
Diego and I were attorneys at MALDEF together. And what I learned from him was the importance of relationships and people. I was always very frustrated with him because being at MALDEF, you know, you have to do the work of 5 attorneys with less resources, less time, less sleep. And I always felt like he was buzzing around, talking to everybody, talking to the interns. Everywhere we went, whenever we traveled for our cases, he was always striking up conversations with people, whether it was clients or opposing counsel or, you know, the waiter at the restaurant. And I was always very frustrated with him because I felt like he needed to be more focused on his work. And what I learned from Diego is that people and relationships are the most important part of the work. And when people know that you're going to go to the mat for them, that you're going to fight for them, that you care about them, it enhances your work and it enhances your mission. And that's an ethos that I think has always driven Diego, and it's something that I've learned from him and that I've tried to carry with me as well.
I think Diego's biggest accomplishment is being able to balance all aspects of his life. I mean, he dedicates 100% to the people that he represents, all of his constituents. It's a never-ending battle for him. Combine that with his family, I mean, his wife, his daughter, and then also still finding a way to continue to make music. I think that I really respect that he's able to do all of those things, to keep pursuing the fight for justice and to still pursue his own personal passion, which is making music.
I think when we look back 10 years from now, people will see Diego as one of the state leaders who was finally able to achieve meaningful reform for our public schools. He has patiently and methodically been working towards a more equitable and fair system for our most vulnerable students, our low-income students, our English language learners. And he's done it in a bipartisan way, in a way that's collaborative, in a way that's inclusive of the concerns of the families in our school districts.
I think his legacy will be as somebody who told the truth, somebody who spoke up and wasn't afraid to speak up to people, even in power, somebody who fought as hard as he could for change, and somebody who made a difference.
Señoras y señores, please welcome tonight's recipient of Maldev's Matt García Public Service Award, el representante Diego Bernal.
The lights are bright, and it's probably better that I can't see you. You know, it's really funny. It was just a couple years ago I was complaining about not getting free tickets to this. You know, being a MALDEF attorney was my first real job. And I've been thinking about what to say tonight, and I really don't know. Because when this is your first job, these awards are the pinnacle of your career. I'm 15 years too early with this. I mean, for me, the lifetime career achievements beyond the success of policy is getting your face on the wall of Mi Tierra and this award. So I don't know what to say to you, but let me start very quickly with this. There is a trinity of women that are wholly responsible for me being here. My brilliant, beautiful wife, Elise, my mother, who's here, Leonor, and my daughter, Zan. You know what they say, behind every great man is a screen, because usually what's happening is he's standing on the shoulders and being advised by brilliant, smart women. They're not standing behind him. He's depending on them to get him where he's going. So thank you so much for that. There's also a trio of women that are responsible for me being here, and those are the women who work in the office, who tell me what I'm supposed to be doing. Anita, Julia, and Mia, we very much have a Wizard of Oz relationship where I kind of am out in front and they're doing all the work in the back and I just sort of do what they say. And if we're being honest, they do all the work and I get all of the credit. So I want to make sure that I recognize them. There's also a table of employees and interns there that I appreciate very much. Look, I have the very unique position of being a former MALDEF attorney. And so I want to take this opportunity, I will talk about myself for a second, but I want to take this opportunity to let you know what these people are going through right now. They're not going to tell you. They're going to get up here in their finest clothes and tell you about all the successes, and they're going to summarize in 5 minutes the amazing things that they're able to accomplish in the past year. What they're not telling you is the ratio to pay and talent could not be any more disproportionate. And they do it because they care about people. What they're not going to tell you is that a good number of them are probably on 4 or 5 hours of sleep. What they're not going to tell you is that before we started, and between speakers, and probably right now as I speak because I'm boring, they are probably returning emails to clients and opposing counsel. They are thinking of arguments. They are doing legal research on their phone right now. The work never ends. What they're not going to tell you is that a lot of their relationships with their spouses, with their significant others, with their children, with their parents, with their siblings are suffering because of the amount of work that this job requires. They're not going to tell you that. They're not going to tell you that because of their incredibly tough work schedule, some of them, including myself, probably make very questionable personal hygiene decisions. You guys look good tonight, though. You do. My point is to do this job requires a very high level of dedication, of commitment, of insanity, and of martyrdom. And so the truth is, even after the exercise in fundraising, they actually have all the money they need to continue to win. It just happens to be in your bank accounts right now. And so I salute them. Look, my time at MALDEF was crazy. I didn't know what I was doing. I think they hired me because I was coming right out of law school, and so I was the cheapest option they had. Of all the attorneys we could hire, let's hire someone who just graduated, hasn't passed the bar. It is a bargain deal. And they got that from me. And I didn't know what to expect. I remember I went to a store to buy a suit because I didn't have any. And I said to the guy at the store, I said, hey, I've got to get a suit to get ready for court. So we walk over to the rack and he starts pulling suits aside and he says, hey, blue is good, gray is good. You don't want to be too flashy. I had no intentions of being flashy. But you don't want to be too flashy because you don't want the judge to go hard on you. Bro, I'm not the defendant, I'm the attorney. I'm offended, but compare that. Compare that to the number of times I accompanied Nita Perales to federal court as over and over again, male attorneys asked her who she worked for, who she was the legal assistant for, whose secretary she was, and the satisfaction I got at the end of the trial as she demolished each and every one of them and won over and over again. That is what it's like to be a MALDEF attorney. People think that you're taking this job because you can't get another job at a firm. No offense to the folks who work at big firms. I know some of you do here. But honestly, opening up a $50,000 or $60,000 position is not a big deal. That's a rounding error in your budget. At MALDEF, if you want one of these jobs, someone has to leave or die. And the queue to fill those jobs is long and full of talent. You absolutely are getting the very best that our community has to offer in these attorneys. Let's talk about me for a minute. My mom is an educator and an education advocate. And my father was a farm worker who then became a social worker and an activist himself. My mom taught me how to fight. My father taught me how to overcome. Tom Sines taught me how to tie a tie. And by the way, I tie them and then just slip them off. I don't do it all over again. And Nita Perales taught me advanced punctuation. The only reason I'm in politics is because when my father got very sick, I had to leave MALDEF for a long period of time, and when I came back, I had to find something else to do. And I was convinced by people that you could use positions like this in a civil rights capacity to fight for other people. There's always going to be elected people who can do the bidding of big business. There's always going to be elected people who are the favorites of the elite of a city or any particular chamber. No offense to chambers, but you guys know what I'm saying. But for farm workers and day laborers and teachers assistants and children, they don't have lobbyists. They don't have the same kinds of organizations. They don't have deep pockets. And so all the things I learned at MALDEF, I take with me in the representation of my district. And yes, I want to do very cool things with technology in schools. And yes, I very much want to turn San Antonio into the sort of gleaming, bright version of itself that it should be. But my greatest achievement so far is making sure that hungry kids at school get food that would otherwise be thrown away. And you guys caught me on a date today. You caught me on a date today because today, just hours, Ron, hours before this, we working with the city. There are housing projects in our city that come without air conditioning. And there are people living in them who can't afford or provide themselves with air conditioning. And along with the city today, we have finished the infrastructure for a program to make sure that by next summer, that does not exist in our city anymore. I'm really proud of that. But I wouldn't be able to do that. I wouldn't be able to work on that. I wouldn't be able to work with our mayor and the city on this were it not for the incredible lessons I learned from my mother, from my father, and from my time here at MALDEF. I don't know what to do with my career now because I made it. Here I am. But if anything, if you remember anything, is that when you see those people, when you walk past them, when you shake their hand, remember that they are not just servants, but these people are heroes. Thank you guys very much.
Muchísimas gracias a Diego. Y por favor, la copa de champán es para el final del programa. Porque ahora vamos al premio final de la noche. It's now my distinct pleasure, an honor to introduce a true hero of San Antonio. Of course, he is our final honoree of the evening. He is the recipient of MALDEF Lifetime Achievement Excellence in Public Service and Community Award. Please join me in greeting Henry Cisneros. How can we call him? How do we address Henry Cisneros? Council Member Cisneros? Mayor Cisneros? Secretary Cisneros? Chairman Cisneros? Dr. Cisneros? You can see why MALDEF is giving him a Lifetime Achievement Award. In fact, he's got enough achievements for several lifetimes. His role today as chairman of the City View Companies, which works with urban home builders to create homes priced for middle-class families, culminates a career path that has taken him from the halls of the academia to council chambers, from City Hall to the White House, and now into boardrooms and corporate suites. Wherever he has gone, Henry Cisneros, hombre de San Antonio, has been sought out for his intelligence and leadership. Henry already earned 2 master's degrees and was pursuing his doctorate when he was only 27 years old. He was elected the youngest councilman in city's history. After 3 terms, he was launched into the national spotlight in 1981 when he was elected mayor and became the first Latino to lead a major American city, San Antonio. During his 4 terms as a mayor, he helped rebuild the city's economic base and spurred the creation of jobs through massive infrastructura and downtown improvements. His stewardship of San Antonio earned him attention in Washington. In 1992, he was appointed Secretario de la Vivienda, Secretary of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. As member of President Bill Clinton's cabinet, Secretary Cisneros was credited with initiating the revitalization of many of the nation's public housing developments and with formulating policies that resulted in the nation's highest ever homeownership rate. After leaving HUD in 1997, Mr. Cisneros, we are proud of this part, took over as President and Chief Operating Officer of Univision Communication, which today is the 5th most watched television network in the nation. We remember him at that time with us in Univision. He continues to serve in Univision's board of directors. In addition to his work leading CityView, Henry Cisneros is a principal and chairman of the executive committee for Silver Cisneros Shank & Company, a municipal finance firm and top corporate underwriting firm in Wall Street. He was remained active in San Antonio, where he has served as former chairman of San Antonio Chamber of Commerce, the San Antonio Economic Development Foundation, and Biomed SA. Born and raised in San Antonio, proud of that, Henry Cisneros holds a Bachelor of Arts and Master's degree in Urban and Regional Planning from Texas A&M University. He earned a Master's degree in Public Administration from Harvard University, studied urban economics at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, holds a doctorate in Public Administration from George Washington University, and has been awarded more than 20 honorary doctorates from leading universities. Let's take a look at the inspiring life of the Honorable Henry Cisneros.
I first met Henry back in the early 80s when he became mayor of the city of San Antonio. He was the youngest mayor at the age of 33 to assume such political leadership role. He immediately revitalized and energized this San Antonio, and particularly the Latino community. Henry truly gives personified the saying, "Si se puede." He energized our community here in San Antonio to assume the leadership role that it rightfully has earned.
You know, I start my thoughts about Henry with the word community and familia. You know, where San Antonio is a city of families, and he comes from this wonderful family, has a wonderful family. I think leadership is in his DNA. He picked that up, he chose that, and then he has the attributes, he has the gifts. Henry is gifted for leadership. His oratory skills, his way of speaking to a group of people and inspiring them to take action, to do something.
I think Henry's legacy is the legions of people who are trying to be like him, whether it's an elected office or another sort of public service or community engagement, that he taught them that they could do anything they set their minds to, and in a lot of different ways to do it. He just so happens to be the best at it on all fronts. But that's his legacy. Again, you can make the list of all of the positions he's held, and I'm not saying it's not impressive, it is, but the scores of people that he inspired and influenced, that I think is really what the legacy is.
Well, Henry's a very organized, structured person, and he's always wanted to do something for his community. He has been very focused on trying to work with the Latino community, but also work with the Anglo community and African American community. He does a lot of bridge building between the wealthy communities, the poor communities, the business communities, and the labor communities. And I think combining all this has put him in a direction involved in public service in many different ways.
I think I learned from Henry that anything is possible. What he did, whether he was trying to or not, was show us that he could do anything, and that meant that we could do anything because we were just like him. He modeled that excellence was possible, that being astute, that having a presidential timber was possible, that we could command respect, that it could all be earned and it was deserved. We I'm not sure if we all wanted to be him as much as we wanted people to look at us the way people looked at him.
I think history will record him as one of our major Latino leaders of this century, and of last century and this century, by moving our community into the forefront and allowing it to become emboldened, allowing it to be energized, allowing it to be a dreamer.
Señoras y señores, con ustedes, Henry Cisneros, Maldev's Lifetime Achievement Excellent in Public and Community Service Award.
Thank you so very much. I'm very touched and humbled. And it's one of those moments where you just want to go right to the core of things. So I want to start by thanking my wife, Mary Alice, who is here this evening. Please stand, Mary Alice, and let us recognize you. She has served on the school board. She has served as a city councilwoman. And the truth of the matter is, many of you know we live in my grandparents' old home in what has been called the poorest census tract of San Antonio. She's leading an effort in a house across the street from where we live to help the children of the neighborhood. And, you know, from time to time, there's a temptation to say, well, we want to live in Monte Vista or we want to live in King William, but I'm married to a woman who's proud to live 1 block from where she went to high school, 4 blocks from where she grew up, and that's the reason we're there, because Mary Alice makes it so. I want to express my deepest appreciation to Tom Sines, who presently leads MALDEF, as we know, and the women who were up here with him earlier, Vilma Martinez and Antonia Hernandez. And let me just say, Vilma is one of those persons that a lot of us looked to early on when she was just a stalwart for her own preparation and education, her commitment to MALDEF from the very beginning. Vilma, thank you for leading the way that you did. And Antonia, I watched her work for years. She was on Senator Kennedy's staff. She got that sense of commitment to the country that comes from having been on that staff and never lost it until this day. She continues. Thank you, Antonia, for your great work. And Tom, thank you for bringing the spirit that you do, the spirit of MALDEF. He's a fighter. He's uncompromising. He's capable in the law. When they talk about the best of the lawyers, Tom Sines is the best we've got. And so, Tom, thank you very much for what you represent. I want to thank Raul Amelie, who's presently serving as the chair of the board, and express my appreciation for being with the other honorees this evening. Frank Herrera, I did a tape for another award he's receiving for his Texas contributions to justice. And I said on that tape what I really believe. I've known Frank for a long time, and you know, you peel back the layers of the onion to find the core truth about a person when you have to reduce it to a sentence. And what I'm convinced of is that Frank grew up in a place and in a time and in a way where he's incapable of looking the other way when there's injustice and when people are being treated unfairly. And no matter what he succeeds in doing and how much he amasses in successes, he will always be the person you can count on to take care of those who are marginalized and at the margins of the society. Thank you, Frank, for that. Regina, thank you for your leadership over all these years. I worked with Regina. We worked together as members of the Clinton administration, and it was when you're a cabinet officer and never expected to be, right? And you go to the White House, and there is a Latina from Texas on the president's staff. Of course, those were special days. It wasn't like this time. But Regina, thank you for your wonderful leadership in those days. And Diego, what can I say? Thank you for your words there. But I've had the privilege of sitting with Diego in my office from time to time when he was a city council member, when he was working on payday lending and and when he's been now in the legislature. And it is true what Joaquin said on the tape. He went and he visited the schools in his district, and I'm talking about 30 or 40 schools. And he went and he got inside the schools and talked to the teachers and the administrators and wrote a report that's unlike any that I know has ever been written about Texas schools. And good policy can be made from the in-depth work that he did. I want us to use these words advisedly because we have a lot of talent, a lot of Latino talent. But in the tradition of the old days when we had someone who just burned with a passion for justice, one of the absolute best we have is Diego Bernal. He's unique in that respect. Thank you, Diego. As for my presence here, let me just say thank you to MALDEF. You grow up in life and you know that there are things that need to be changed and you want to change them. And when I came out of graduate school and came back to San Antonio, I had seen what was working in other cities in the country. And I always thought that the fundamental problem in San Antonio was the unfairness. The fundamental problem was the poverty, the grinding poverty. Grew up on the West Side, and it was, just obvious that there was vast differences. The era when CBS came and did a special on poverty in San Antonio before the country, and people lived in corrales on what is now the UTSA campus downtown with pit privies as restrooms outside, and the Peace Corps sent people here to prepare for third world conditions before they sent them abroad when the Peace Corps was first put together. So there was just real problems. And I thought that the best strategy was to grow the economy and create jobs and build a middle class. And I still believe that that is important. But when you get into a position, I was a city council member in 1975, the world queues up choices, and you have to make decisions, and they sort of make you prove what you really believe. So we had issues in those days, and MALDEF was involved in many of them, but issues like the question of whether we're going to protect the city's water supply in the Edwards Aquifer and stand up to the developers who wanted to extend more lines over the sensitive recharge areas, and issues like one of the big ones, 1977, MALDEF was involved in helping the Justice Department declare our system of at-large voting a system that didn't represent the people, and it was true. There was 9 city council members on the city council, 2 Latinos in a city that was 60% Mexicano at the time, 1 African American, and 5 city council members who lived within a few miles of each other on the northwest side of the city. Justice Department came in and said, that is not going to fly. We're going to change the system. MALDEF helped create the districting system that we didn't think could be passed, that the city would accept. But we put it to a vote and worked hard for it. And in the final analysis, by 1 vote per precinct, we ended up with a system that has fundamentally altered the trajectory of San Antonio. Fair representation. MALDEF did that. And a lot of other people. Southwest voter, Willie Velasquez, the great Choco Mesa. I'll never forget all of the people who were working the computers and working the maps to make that happen. So I'm telling you that my life has been a product of the times. And I would just like to take a few moments here with you to share a little bit about 1968, 50 years ago, when MALDEF was created. Because, let me just say in advance, I think there's many parallels to the mood that the country finds itself in today. 1968. The year started, and there were protests concerning the Vietnam War, intense protests. And then, even though the administration was asserting that the United States was about to end the Vietnam War out of a victory, there came an offensive called the Tet Offensive in Hue, where the North Vietnamese were able to take a North Vietnamese city, a Vietnamese city, South Vietnam, and the president, President Johnson, could not further defend the strategy that was underway, and took himself out of the running for president. It was a massive surprise to the country when that occurred. This was in March, just before the primaries were well underway, March of 1968. In April, I'll never forget the night, I was walking to the student center at A&M because I had some student center responsibilities, and word came that Dr. King had been assassinated in Memphis. It was a crushing moment. And before long in that night, major American cities were burning in a way that we haven't seen since. Fires within a few blocks of the White House, actually. The White House had sandbags and machine guns in front of the White House itself. We went on through that spring, and again, I'll never remember the night. I was home, and my mom woke me up, and she said, "You're not going to believe this. Bobby Kennedy was just killed in Los Angeles with a 2-hour time difference. It had been late in the night there, and we found out the next morning. The country went into what could only be called a kind of a depression. Can this possibly be happening in the United States? Is this the way we settle our disputes? There were stories in the newspapers around the world that basically compared the United States system with others where we were settling things by assassinating our leaders. This was June 6th. And then by July and August, the presidential campaign had heated up, and the Democratic nomination was an all-out brawl that ended up in a police riot in Chicago, with the police literally beating people up on the streets from the other side and fights within the convention. Hubert Humphrey was nominated. Richard Nixon was nominated by the Republicans, and the rest of the year was a brawl with all kinds of racist intonations and so forth through that year. The protests continued, the Vietnam protests. The burning of cities continued. And the president appointed a commission called the Kerner Commission, headed by Governor Otto Kerner of Illinois. And the Kerner Commission concluded that America was separate and unequal. The American dream had basically failed. I was recently asked to write a chapter for the 50th anniversary of the Kerner Commission report. So there's a lot of 50 anniversaries at this moment, because 68 was literally that kind of year. They've just written a book on 1968. That's the name of the book, because it was arguably the most tumultuous year in American history since the Depression, probably. And it had echoes of Civil War. Now, as I look at the Kerner report, America looked at issues through a lens that was essentially African American and white. The problems that confronted the country were perceived in that way. The issue that confronted whites was the Vietnam War and the Vietnam protests, at least white young people who were on the streets protesting. And the issue that confronted African Americans was the racism that continued to exist in cities both in the South and in the North. But as I wrote this chapter that I was asked to do for the Kerner Commission update, they asked me to write on the progress of Latinos since that period 50 years ago. And it forced me to think about what was happening in the Latino community in 1968. We had leaders that were well established in our community here in San Antonio. And I want to use the prism of San Antonio for a moment, because San Antonio was a kind of an incubator of many, many things that then spread across the country. Leaders like Congressman Henry B. Gonzalez. Earlier, Emma Tenayuca was mentioned by the mayor. She had done her work in an earlier period, but it continued in labor organizing and so forth. Municipal leaders like Dr. Jose San Martin. But there was a new generation of leaders that was one generation behind the group that I just mentioned. And it was people like Joe Bernal, who, by the way, is here tonight. Joe Bernal, State Senator Joe Bernal. Other names that have been mentioned, like Greg Luna and Mario Obledo and Matt Garcia, for whom your award is named. Pete Tijerina, Albert Peña, Pete Torres, Maria Berriozabal, who worked at the courthouse in those days. She's here tonight as well. Maria, thank you for your work. So they were the new kind of political figures of the time that cut their teeth in the 1960s. Albert Peña was fighting increases in utility rates, and Pete Torres was fighting at City Hall. And but there were people who were sort of playing out the dynamic of the time. In some ways, San Antonio was creating the institutions that the African American community had created in Atlanta and in other places, like the VEP project, which preceded Willie Velazquez's Southwest Voter, and the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, which prompted some of the ideas that came into the formation of MALDEF. There were other names and talents who were still another generation behind, and they were working the streets. So we had some names you'll recognize, like Mario Compián and Darío Chapa and Jesse Guzman and Juan Patlan, and one you certainly will recognize, Rosie Castro, on the streets of the city at that time. And they were experimenting with alternate ideas that would go outside of the traditional politics, Mayo and Razonida. But the truth of the matter is, things began to sprout right here in San Antonio. There was an active Latino presence in 1968. Willie Velazquez walked the streets of San Antonio and then countless other cities, creating the Southwest Voter Registration and Education Project, a brilliant piece of work. He believed in much the same way that you could say Dr. King believed, if America just lived up to its values, we don't have to reinvent values. There are values, we just have to live them, then we will progress as a people. Willie was that way. There was a young man named Ernie Cortez who was cutting his teeth in community organizing. What he created became COPS. And then through the Industrial Areas Foundations, it spread to El Paso, the Valley, Houston, Austin, Los Angeles, Phoenix, all the places that Ernie Cortez went. And so there was, as I say, a lot of groundswell, and one of the things that was part of that groundswell was MALDEF. You've heard several times tonight the names of the people, but they were lawyers. They were aspiring judges. They were people who were dissatisfied with the status quo. They were smart. They were not going to be stopped again. And their answer was to do it through the law. We're going to change the laws. We're going to use the law. We're going to use legal skills to do things like get school district funding corrected, to get things done like redistricting of city councils and municipal things across the country, to do things like was done in San Antonio with working with the Justice Department to get the voting system changed here. And they were right that the law is important. And if you need any reaffirmation that the law and the courts and the jurisprudence system are important, turn on the television set today, and see what that fight is about. So what I guess I want to say to you tonight is that just as in 1968, there was a period of contention and great difficulty within the country, so too is there today. And out of times like this comes the momentum, comes the energy to create the next level of change. And that's what it is that needs to be done in this day and in this time. And it needs to be done on behalf of the Latino community. Why do I say that? Because I will repeat the words that somebody said here tonight, which is, never before have we seen the American Latino community targeted by the powers that be, including the President of the United States, the way we're witnessing at this very moment. It's just not right. It's not fair. We don't deserve it. And I'm not making it up. This is not partisan. I'm not talking as a Democrat or a Republican, a liberal or conservative. I'm just talking the facts. The President of the United States says that Mexico is sending us only rapists and murderers. Words coming from the President of the United States. The same president who goes out of his way to make it impossible for DACA students to to get the legal status within the United States and attacks the DACA program. I know DACA students. They are brilliant, hardworking young people. It will be a tragedy if they are required to leave the United States. It'll be a tragedy. The young people that I know will be bereft. They will be abandoned. They will be on their own if they're returned to Mexico. But it's happening across America right now. People are being rounded up for trumped-up excuses and sent back, even though they have DACA protections. It's happening right now before our eyes. Other instances that we've seen in recent, the president says he cannot get a fair trial because the judge named Curiel has a Hispanic background, even though I've met him and he was born in Indiana. He was born in East Chicago, Indiana, trained classically at the University of Indiana and Purdue, but somehow he's less of a judge because his last name is Curiel and his parents are Mexican. We saw Jorge Ramos tossed out of a press conference. The most respected, if you poll today Latinos and who they trust most as a name, as a figure, the man's name is Jorge Ramos from Univision, the anchor, tossed out of a press conference because the president didn't want him in the room to ask questions anymore. Unacceptable immigration strategies that have placed more and more pressure in order to just make no concessions on immigration. We know how to produce viable immigration reform. It is a three-part strategy that includes sanctions and protect security along the border, work permits for those who are here, and then a path to legalization. This administration refuses to go along with the pieces, calling even the most smallest concessions amnesty and deciding that they can't be done. And of course, then there is the wall. The obsession with the wall, the obsessions with funding the wall, the obsession with creating crisis in order to build a wall, the concern about sanctuary cities because people in cities, the police chiefs tell us they should not use police powers to arrest people and pursue people who are here in an undocumented capacity because then it affects the rest of law enforcement strategies, but the administration continues to push issues related to the wall. And then, for me, the mortal sin, separating children from their mothers and fathers at the border. A completely concocted crisis that didn't have to be. You just have to have enough judges. You don't have to declare the actions criminal, so you put them in a criminal procedure and then are forced to take mothers from their children. It doesn't have to be. It's all a pressure tactic, and let me tell you, it's all focused on the American Latino community because they believe we're not going to respond, we're not going to vote against them, we're not going to hurt them, and we're here to be hit in those ways. It is just wrong. And at a time like this, we need the best lawyers we can possibly put on the job, and that's why we need MALDEF now more than ever. Frank was right when he said this earlier tonight. Unacceptable, should not be. We've been too quiet. We've been too quiet and watched too much of this play out. And we just absolutely need the strategies that will help us respond. Let me close by saying yesterday I was reading an article by Tom Friedman. Most of you know him, an excellent writer in the New York Times, and he's written multiple books. And he said, and this was sort of like a summation kind of piece. He was sort of summarizing a lot of judgments from over a span of time. And he said, there are three things that will shape the American future that we're squandering. Now, let me just say, we're squandering a lot right now. We are squandering a lot. This period, this moment, is the kind of time when great nations begin to decline. Because some of the things that are being done are irrevocable. They cannot be fixed with an election in 2020. They can't be fixed in any simple way. There's damage being done on budgets, there's damage being done in authorities, there's damage being done in the courts, the appointments to courts, etc. Okay. Tom Friedman said there's three sets of things that will shape the American future that are at risk. One of them is immigration. This is a country that was built because people come from other countries and bring their best talents, and that doesn't just mean engineers in Silicon Valley. It means people who come here with the guts and gumption to cross the Chihuahuan desert in 117-degree heat to come here and work and do something for their families, and they build a better country in the process. And we're finding every kind of way to tell them don't come here and push them out when they do come here. Great mistake on the part of our country today. Second issue. All right, so that's the first issue, and it clearly is an arena in which Latinos have a stake, and it clearly is an arena in which MALDEF has a say. So there it is. One of the key questions before our times in MALDEF's target zone. A second one is the issue, he said, second issue is allies. We're squandering our relationships in the world. Very true. People laugh at us, literally. Literally. They wonder whether we're crazy. I'm an officer of Habitat for Humanity, and I go to places outside the United States in that capacity, and business people in other countries over a private dinner will say, "What is wrong with you? What are you people doing? We've always looked to the United States positively, and we're squandering that." But again, the American Latino community, in its bridge relationship with the nations to the south, not just Mexico, but Central America and the nations to the south that are ever more important in world affairs, we're squandering that whole set of relationships. Again, the American Latino community and MALDEF have a voice and a say in that process. And finally, Tom Friedman said, we are squandering our values. Immigration, allies, and values. What values? Well, values like due process of law. Values like a sense of justice. Values like a sense of recognition for inclusion and tolerance. So what I'm saying to you is that not only do we need MALDEF to defend the American Latino community, not only need MALDEF as the lawyers to the Latino community, we need MALDEF and its principles and its values to help us save the future of the United States of America. Just like we need the American Latino community to play that role as well. We are now 55 million people, going on 100 million people within the next 30 years or so. Half of the growth of the United States will be Latinos. 100 million people when the country is about 400 million total. What happens to our community, what we do with our community, moves the needle. It moves the needle for the United States. If we're going to lag in education, the United States is going to lag in education. If we're going to lag in jobs and incomes, the United States is going to lag in not having a strong middle class. So MALDEF, in the first 50 years, defended us well, put us in position to fight. In the next 50 years, MALDEF is going to define our place in America and indeed define the place of America in the world. That's the significance. No BS, no hyperbole. That's the significance of MALDEF, the work it's trying to do, and the work we have to support them in doing. Thank you very much for allowing me to be part of tonight.
Una vida de inspiración para todos nosotros. Y ahora pues ya estamos casi terminando y es un placer pedirle que regrese aquí al escenario el presidente, el MALDEF Chair, Raúl Lomelí. Por favor, Raúl.
Maldefistas, Maldefians, it's been a great night. This 2 minutes is not in the program, and Tom was not informed anyone was going to be introducing him. But for 6+ years that I have served on this board, I always look forward to Tom's closing remarks for his eloquence and clear thoughts to end our annual gatherings across this great nation of us, this Latinos Unidos de América. What a beautiful name that sounds. So this is purely a chair's indulgence. 22 years he has devoted his life to Maldev in 2 stints. And since 2009, he has led us. Tom embodies and continues with our established tradition of tireless, determined, and fearless past presidents and general counsels like Vilma Martinez and Antonia Hernandez. His pursuit for cutting-edge litigation work, he leads a team of 57 attorneys and staff members to identify, pursue, and defend at any given time. Please look at your programs, page 17 through 23. At any given time, 40+ active court cases across the country. It can be in the courthouse, but also in front of the Supreme Court. From battling, redistricting for fair Latino representation at the local, county, state, and federal level, sure in Arizona and Texas, but also in California. To fighting for more equitable and adequate funding in public education districts, just like it happened here in Edgewood, but now happening in New Mexico. Tom and his team are always identifying intentional, multi-bias, intersectional, or unintentional discrimination. How respected is Tom? Well, over the past decade alone, whenever there's been an opening in the California Supreme Court, his name has been on that list. And I am certain that if he had just given a wink to the process, he would have been appointed. But his heart is Maldevian. And he knows his work here is yet undone. So, Tom's commitment to Maldev is undeniable. But more important, his long-lasting impact in pursuit of Latino justice in this country of ours is irrefutable. So with that, and as you listen to Tom tonight, please remember that the text to give is still active. I would like to know where we're at. Every penny you give, he will use and stretch to the limits to represent our community. Why? Because legality is about power, but Maldev is about justice. Thank you, Adam. To the podium.
So I know it's late, folks, but you only turn 50 once. I already did it. Now Maldev's turn. I'm accustomed, as those of you who've been here before know, to beginning with thanks. And I recognize that with twice the usual attendance tonight, over 500 of you here tonight, thank you all. That some of you may not have been here before, but I usually begin with thanks. But tonight I feel compelled to begin with an apology, which is so many of you on this special occasion came up to me during the reception and here at dinner to congratulate Maldev, and I simply want to apologize for any questionable hygienic choices I may have made. That was the words, right? Questionable choices of personal hygiene. There you go. So let me begin with thanks. First of all, I want to thank our terrific MC who has taken a lengthy evening and made it go so quickly. Maria Antonieta Collins, thank you very much for your leadership tonight. I want to thank, of course, our chair, Coca-Cola, and Peter Villegas. I want to thank our co-chair, Toyota, which has been with us for so many years. I want to thank the dinner committee that served in making this the great success that it is, and I want to ask our dinner committee members to please stand as we thank you for You've heard from Raul Lomelí Azuel, our current board chair, and Regina Montoya, our past board chair, but there are many board members, past and present, in the room, including, of course, our other honoree, Frank Herrera. But so many of you here, San Antonio, still so critically, deeply involved in MALDEF, I'd like to ask all of the current and past board members to please stand. I have mentioned already, but I want to again acknowledge the leaders, 3 co-chairs of our 50th anniversary committee. This is just the beginning. They helped us to put this together, as well as a panel discussion last night. But we will be celebrating throughout the year, throughout the country, including back here in San Antonio again. But I want to thank and recognize one more time our 50th anniversary committee co-chairs, Antonio Hernandez, Frank Herrera, and Vilma Martinez. I, of course, need to thank the staff members who labored long hours to put together this evening, including the after party with dancing, despite my objections, that they've organized. So let me acknowledge and recognize Gina Montoya, Sandra Hernandez, Antonio Marcano, Heaven Ocampo, Elijah Gonzalez, Jose Delgado, and Aaron Eng, and all of the others who have put this evening together. Thank you to them. We have a tremendous number of staff members. You've already heard from Selena about the folks here in San Antonio, but folks are here, past and present staff members. You've heard Al Kaufman recognized. I want to recognize Teresa Fe Bustillos, a former vice president of MALDEF. We have 3 current vice presidents, Sandra Hernandez, Gina Montoya, and of course Nina Perales here. But I want to ask all of the past and present MALDEF staff members. Diego has given unforgettable light to the experiences that you have at MALDEF. I would like all of the past and present staff members to please stand for all of the work you've done for the community. And now I want to recognize one more honoree, not advertised, related to the staff sacrifices. We have an employee here in San Antonio who is the longest serving employee in the history of our organization. She has been with MALDEF for 35 of its 50 years. Please join me in honoring and welcoming Carmen Leja, paralegal in the San Antonio Regional Office. This has been a special evening. I want to thank once more our tremendous honorees. Their eloquence has enlivened an evening and made it go by so quickly, just moment of inspiration after moment of inspiration. Of course, the bright and courageous Diego Bernal, the wise and dedicated Regina Montoya, the inspiring and incomparable Henry Cisneros, and of course, our own iconic Frank Herrera. Thank you all for your participation this evening. Last night, we had a panel discussion joined by Vilma Martinez, Al Kaufman, Teresa Fe Bustillos, Nina Perales, and moderated by Ricardo Pimentel. We had a lengthy discussion about MALDEF's achievements, about MALDEF's future, about what connects it all together. It was inspiring. But we heard last night what others have said tonight, that although it's been half a century, an organization birthed in the 1968 that Henry Cisneros described so eloquently, perhaps the most challenging year this nation ever faced to that point. An organization birthed in that year that opened its doors here in San Antonio in August of 1968. So many folks last night and tonight have said that MALDEF is needed today as much or more than ever. And that is certainly true. This week has done damage to our nation. This week has challenged our nation. This week places us on the precipice, depending on what the full United States Senate does, of sexual assailants having more members of the United States Supreme Court than the Latino community. Think about that. More sexual assailants on the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, than Latinos. Of course, we know that her strength and her intellect means that Justice Sotomayor can take on and defeat both Justices Thomas and, if it happens, Justice Kavanaugh, half justices at best, because of how they entered that court with a significant cloud over their head. This is the product of the most anti-Latino presidential administration in our history. Henry has already explained how this president birthed his long-shot vanity candidacy for president with a slur against Mexican immigrants. He doubled down a year later by challenging a federal judge. He began his administration with executive orders targeting the Latino immigrant community. Now, I have previously described this administration as lawless, with a dual meaning, but I focused on the fact that they do not seem to understand or care about the law. And that gave a special role, as you've already heard described, for an organization like MALDEF. But tonight I want to talk briefly about the duplicity of this administration. Again, a dual meaning, but I want to focus on the double standard that seems to characterize Donald Trump in his dealings with the Latino community. On the one hand, he recently, through the Department of Homeland Security, put forward an inhumane and cruel proposed rule on public charge, an effort to punish immigrants, prevent them from naturalizing, prevent them from legalizing, an effort, frankly, to criminalize the poor in our country. That lawless rule clearly contradicts Congress's intent in permitting immigrants, including undocumented immigrants, legislatively to access some of the very programs that Donald Trump would now use to drive them out of our borders. Contrast that public charge rule, lawless as it is, with his declaration through his Attorney General that DACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, is somehow unlawful and therefore must be ended. Public charge and DACA. Look at how he treated Judge Gonzalo Curiel, accusing him of bias simply because he was Mexican American and Donald Trump was proposing a wall. Contrast that with Judge Kavanaugh, who he would have sit on the highest court in the land despite credible, uninvestigated indications that he committed sexual assault and that he previously has perjured himself before the United States Senate. Curiel, Kavanaugh, duplicity. Think about the unprecedented detention of children and families that this administration is now engaged in creating. They abandoned separation because they were forced to, but they will unify those families behind bars and behind walls through an expansion of family detention that is unprecedented. Contrast that with his swift pardon of Sheriff Joe Arpaio before he had even been sentenced, before we even knew if he would have to go behind bars for even a day. Donald Trump pardoned Arpaio. Detention of children and Arpaio. Duplicity incarnate. Think about the hoops, the delays that those who are currently seeking to naturalize are facing. We have seen a lengthening of the wait to receive citizenship. We have seen a change in how citizenship is adjudicated under Donald Trump. And contrast that with his effort to place a citizenship question on Census 2020. He thinks census is important enough for us to count, but it's really, as we know, about deterring and preventing participation of every Latino family with mixed status in it, of every Latino family in a community with immigrants. Contrast the duplicity, naturalization delays with a citizenship question on the census. This duplicity is what we have seen and will see in the months and years to come from the most anti-Latino administration in our history. But at MALDEF, we know from the history we heard discussed tonight, and that was discussed last night, and I urge you to watch it online if you didn't have a chance yesterday. But we know that our history, our legacy, that includes so many people, both those with us and those who have departed. We know that that legacy strengthens us. I've previously mentioned 3 of our past presidents and general counsel who have passed away. I want to recognize some of those who are still with us and with us here tonight who have played a role in MALDEF's founding and its establishment. We have Kathy Dona, who is Matt Garcia's niece, here. We have, you've already heard, Joe and Mary Esther Bernal are here. Mario Bledo Jr. is here. The Caso family is here. Dr. Billy and Oralia Elizondo are here. And Teresa Vale. All of them played a significant role. I also want to pause and recognize, as Henry pointed out, our strength is in immigration. Our strength is in the values that immigrants bring. So I do want to recognize that the Consul General of Mexico, Reina Torres Mendivil, is here as well. But last night, we talked about how our work today ties directly to our work from the past. There is a thread of justice, or better said, a cord of justice, an enlace de justicia that connects the work from the 70s to the work of today. I will give you just one example. You've already heard about Plyler versus Doe. There's a direct connection between Plyler and our work under Antonia Hernandez here and in California to create the very first laws to provide in-state tuition to those Plyler kids so that when they succeeded as they did tremendously in K through 12 education, they had an option to go to higher education. There's a clear connection, a thread, a cord between those efforts on in-state tuition and MALDEF's DC office's leadership in crafting the very first proposal of a DREAM Act to provide to this country the great benefit of the continued presence of those Plyler kids contributing to our economy. There's a clear connection between Plyler, in-state tuition, DREAM Act, and today, our efforts to defend DACA, where most recently our team led by Nina Perales snatched, I don't usually like to use cliches, but it applies here, snatched a victory from the jaws of defeat, an unpredicted, no one anticipated denial of a preliminary injunction by Judge Andrew Hanen. It is a connection, that thread, that cord of justice. And so when we go into court today, we go in knowing that we are tied to our predecessors, back to Pete Tijerina and Mario Obledo, to Antonio Hernandez and Vilma Martinez. We go in with the strength of that cord of justice. And MALDEF, with that cord of justice tied to our now 50-year legacy, will contribute to breaking down what we face today. That cord of justice enables us to pull down any wall, to pull down any detention fence, to pull down barbed wire, to pull down all of the edifices of injustice and inequality that are being created, inspired by the orange storm in the White House. That cord of justice, our enlace de justicia, is what MALDEF takes to this battle. And with all of you, we will pull down the border wall, we will pull down the detention fences, we will pull down all of the injustices that we face. We go forward with the strength of all of you, tied to all of you, linked to your efforts, linked to your support. We can and will prevail. Thank you all for being here this evening. I am supposed to end. You have the champagne at your tables. This is a birthday anniversary wish to MALDEF, and all of you have supported us throughout half a century. Here's to MALDEF. Salud.